Yeah, they have started the recording as well.
Yes, Jaipriya ma'am.
Shall I start, sir?
Yeah, yes, Kavita ma'am, please. You can start now.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. This session is all about cybersecurity awareness and career opportunities. And the presenter of this session is Mr. Gopi Venkadeshan. On behalf of the organizing team, Center for Information Technology and Engineering, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
To introduce the presenter, may I now invite Dr. B. Balamar, Assistant Professor, Center for Information Technology and Engineering. Sir, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Kavita ma'am, for introducing about me. Now, let's come about our FDP, about the resource person. I am thoroughly pleased to witness you all here in this FDP. It's my privilege to introducing our today resource person, Mr. Gopi Venkadeshan, with more than 14 plus years experience in the IT industry. He can comfortably say that he knows the field of designing, implementation, or troubleshooting of network technologies. He is experienced in analysis, installation, implementation, and troubleshooting of WAN, LAN, DC projects, etc. Corporate experience in various roles of networking. And networking as an engineer, handling WAN, Cisco, Juniper, Fortinet, WatchGuard, Checkpoint, Extreme, etc. devices. Technical audit, penetration testing, vulnerability assessment. Then he conducted many seminars on around the city as part of his ongoing effort to spread awareness about technology and its practical uses in our day-to-day life. He is also writing a book on the same. He has important knowledge through these workshops and seminars, that workshops on digital evidence for ISACA Bangalore chapter, workshop on firewall technologies for Dirahu ISP Maldives, workshop on wireless security ISA Chennai chapter, guest lecturer for MSc Cyber Crime and Information Security and PG Diploma in Information Security, University of Madras. He has some certified engineer, multi-cloud, extreme networks certified instructor, specialist in NAC certified, Cisco systems instructor, Checkpoint certified security instructor, security expert certified EC council instructor, IPv6 certified instructor, Gold Juniper Networks. His extraordinary ability and his power is that senior security consultant and network administrator. He is completely mastered installation and configuration of routers, routing protocols, LAN switching. His technical experience in network security products such as VPN, IDS, IDP solutions, and firewalls. Security audit and vulnerability assessment experience, including network attack and penetration testing, host security diagnostics. Familiarity with risk analysis and mitigation methodology, security policy, and procedure development, incident response program, patch management, and vulnerability management processes, security training and awareness, ability to address confidentiality, integrity, and vulnerability of the network and systems, and provides the foundation for many risk mitigating activities. With his wide range of professional skills and the experience, I would like to invite Mr. Gopi Venkadeshan sir to share his expertise on cyber security awareness and career opportunities. Sir, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bala. Thank you for
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
introducing
sir.
me.
Thank you, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I
Thanks.
hope you guys are not exhausted with the set of information which is being delivered by various uh, experts in different technologies for the past 5 days. I hope so, right? So I would have gone through different topics as well. And my responsibility here, it's going to be giving you an awareness on. Okay. Seeing the streaming is getting started.
Sir, if you want to give some introduction, you can, sir.
It's okay. So the introductions have been given already, but anyway, at the end of this session, whatever the set of questions are going to be raised by the participants, I'm here to help you out.
Thank you. Sir.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone, this is Cybersecurity Awareness Workshop for Manoonmaniyam Sundaranor University. First of all, I welcome you all for this workshop. And if you want to participate in any of the other workshop, because I'll be doing many of the workshop then and there or online, and you can be in touch with me. I'll be sharing you my contact details in a couple of slides later. Okay, so who am I? I'm Gopi Venkatesan, 20 plus years of industry experience in consulting and training. I was the technical head for Hyderabad International Airport, Bangalore International Airport, Delhi Airport, Bombay Stock Exchange, ESPN Star India. I have various certifications from different vendors, like from Cisco, Juniper, EC Council, Extreme, Checkpoint, IPv6, McAfee. Of course, a couple of cloud-based certifications as well. Apart from this, I'm also an authorized trainer for Cisco. I'm an authorized trainer for Checkpoint. I'm an EC Council certified instructor. I'm Juniper Network certified instructor. I'm an Extreme Networks proctor for the whole Asia. I'm also an IPv6 gold level of certified trainer in India. For any of the communication you want to be having, you wanted to have some sort of career guidance, or you wanted to have some sort of discussions with respect to the cybersecurity discussions, whatever we are planning to have now, or any of the clarifications, you can be in touch with me. So you can send an email to gopi@genesys.com or gopi@learnpronetworking.com. Right? You can also search my name on the social networking sites like your Twitter, Facebook, as Gopi Venkatesan. You can find me and you can connect with me as well. I'll be responding for all of your queries. Okay, first of all, cybersecurity or security. Why do we have to worry about securing? And what is that we are planning to secure? See, in current scenario, everything has been digitized. Think about your money, how you are doing the transaction. I do remember that in earlier days, if you wanted to do any kind of a transaction, either I have to I have to present a check. If I have to transfer some money to you, I have to give a check. All you have to do is you will go and deposit it, and you will get the money credited into your account. Of course, the parameters on the check supposed to be valid, right? So like my signature should be valid, the date, the name to whom I have given, all of these things should be valid. Now, is that the case? Even while we are watching a movie at a theater, we are transferring money. We can do that one because the money has been digitized. Okay? Now, then the identity. See, for submitting your identity, most of the attackers' choice would be what? Stealing your identity. Why? They just want to hide their identity. For that, they need to prove that this request is coming from Gopi. They need to have the complete set of information about me, like my Aadhaar card, my PAN card. They have to steal that information, right? So most of the case now, what is that happening is, all of these cards are also being digitized. We people are scanning the data and we are storing it over there. For example, if you are planning to create a new login with any of these websites, any of the websites you would like to register, most of the time what we are trying to do, we will either register with Facebook or Twitter. When we do that one, what is happening, an API call is going to be happening from the website to the Facebook, and our identity is going to be linked from Facebook. So what is happening? The details, whatever you have provided in Facebook, is being used for creating an account in a new website. That's what is happening, right? So what probably, if a Facebook account has been compromised, somebody else could use your identity for creating a new account wherever they want, if they have the connectivity or register using Facebook option. right? Apart from that, there are so much of data, right? So the money is also digitized, identity is also digitized, data, of course, everything is data. Even most of the people have seen that they used to store all their passwords in the form of a document or an Excel sheet, right? So that is also going to be stored in the digital format only. See, everything is digitized. So when I say money not only in the currencies I'm talking about, even digital currencies got introduced, like your bitcoins, right? There are variety of bitcoins are coming, cryptocurrencies. I'm talking about the cryptocurrencies. There are variety of cryptocurrencies that also got introduced, right? So everything is digital. And where do we store this information? So we have to have some storage space. The data can be stored over there. Where it is being stored? In earlier days, we used to have some tape drives. I hope you guys might have heard about the cassette tapes, right? So cassette tapes is used to store the music on it, and we can play it using a Walkman or any of the tape recorder, and you can use that one using that tape recorder player. You can play the content of your magnetic tape. When it comes to computer systems, we used to have something called as what a floppy drive, 1.2 MB and 1.44 MB. We used to have that floppy drive using which we can carry the data from one of the digital device to another digital device. We can copy from one device, carry it over to the other device, and copy the data back to the new device. You can do that one. Apart from that, we also used to have pen drives, CD drives, SD cards. We have variety of memory storage options. Now what is that going on? We don't need to have any data over here. If you take my home network as an example, whatever the photographs I took, I used to take it on my mobile phone, is automatically going to be synchronized to my cloud drive. How that is possible? I have established a connection. I just purchased a space on the cloud, right? That space is only for me, and that space is accessible only using the specific logins, right? This is option number one. Right? Option number two, I also have a cloud drive at my home. That cloud drive got connected to the cloud. My cloud drive will be always on. So whatever the data I wanted to access from my cloud drive, I can do that. See, the cloud drive which is hosted on the cloud itself, like I have to buy 50 GB, means I have to pay for it at a regular cycle, like monthly, yearly, I have to pay for it. Whereas the cloud storage device I purchased, I stored at my home, I don't need to pay for the storage part because the storage is mine. I have 2 TB of storage drive. I don't need to pay for it. So now accessing this data is going to be as simple as connected to my PC. How come? Because all of your mobile devices got connected to internet, right or not? So you can also go to the kiosk, or you can also use any of the PC which has internet access. You can connect to these devices. All you need is what? The usernames and passwords. You know the ID, the cloud drive identification, and you must know the username and password. Once you have that one, you can access the storage from any part of the world. I hope you understand. Now, we know the most important content are being stored in digital format. Where they are going to be stored? In cloud. As long as you have internet access, as long as the drive is also connected to the cloud, of course you will be able to access any portion of the data in it. Now, if you see that, because the data is available on the network, available on the public network, of course your data is going to be private for you. You will be securing them with some sort of usernames and passwords or OTP, two-factor authentication. You might be doing all of them. But the point is what? Every day, the number of threats are increasing. One statistic says that every day, 360,000 malwares are being introduced or being developed by the attackers. My point is, where it leads to variety of threats. So if you see that US, data theft is 6 billion over a population of 326 million. Think about India. How much theft would happen? Of course, we may be claiming that what data I have. I don't have any data. Not everyone is using everything digital. Like I don't have any of my personal data stored in my computer. I don't have any credit card information stored in over there. Do I have to secure my PC? Obviously you have to, because if the data is not available on your PC, the target, the goal of an attacker could be using the resources what you have. You have paid some money in procuring your PC, like an i9 processor, 64 GB of RAM, 1 TB of SSD. You bought everything, right? And you're claiming that no data is available, and the resources, the CPU resources, the memory resources can be utilized by an attacker. That could be possible for crypto mining, or if you have stored the data, they can also use it as a ransomware attacks. They can do that one, or else they can compromise your machine and they can initiate an attack from your machine to the target machine. That is quite possible, right? So don't ever say that I don't have any of the data stored, I don't want to protect my computer. One more example. Of course, everyone is having an email address. What is the significance of having an email address? To send and receive the emails. Okay, I'm going to be opening up mail, I will be sending an email, I'll be receiving an email. Of course, what is the risk factor in it? Think about this. You forgot a password for your bank login. What do? You forgot password. Where the reset link is going to be sent to? Your email account. You forgot the password for your Facebook account. You're trying to reset it. Where the reset link is going to be given or sent to? Your email ID. Obviously, you have to safeguard your email account. If not, probably an attacker who gained access to your email account may try to access your Facebook account, or he may try to access your bank account. Then he will generate a forgot password link and it will come to your email ID. Of course, that email can be used by an attacker to reset the password. Further consequences, you have to face it. Hope you understand. Now, so when we are talking about the threats, there are a variety of threats available. So, of course, if you name an attack, that is, you have different types of attacks. But we are talking about a threat. What is a threat? A threat is a communicated intent to inflict harm or loss. That's what threat is all about. But how this threat is going to become, how the threat is going to be launched, from where it is going to be launched, and how this is going to be launched, based on that, the threats have been categorized into 4 types: unstructured, structured, internal, and external. See, because this cybersecurity workshop is not for the end users, to whom it is meant for, to whom we have to train on, to whom we have to give this kind of a presentation. See, if you have a company about 50,000 employees, which are all the people have to be part of this training, the cybersecurity awareness? Everyone. Why? Because everyone is using some form of a digital device to get connected to a network so that they will be able to access their resources. Hope you understand what I'm trying to say. A receptionist, what is that she is going to be doing? Again, the same thing. That PC is also going to be connected to the network. If she is not good enough in understanding some attack is launched against her PC or his PC, that PC can be compromised. Using that PC, the whole network can be compromised. We normally call this as a trust exploitation attack. You understand? So, threat may be initiated from anyone, intentionally or unintentionally, knowingly or unknowingly. So, depending on how and from where or from whom the threat is being initiated, the threats have been categorized into 4 types. What are all they? Unstructured, structured, internal, and external. What do you mean by unstructured threat? The threat is going to be initiated by a novice user. What I mean to say, I think I'll be having a slide. Can you see this one? Okay. So the threat is going to be initiated by a novice user. What do you mean by that? He don't know how a network operates. He don't know how an operating system works. He don't know what set of information he is interested in. He don't know where the data resides. He doesn't know how to get into there. He doesn't know how to steal that information. Most importantly, he doesn't know how to cover his tracks. What I mean to say, the traces of your attack will be there, right? You have to clear those traces. If a user is a novice user, he is not at all aware of it. Probably, if the network is properly secured and he's also having a trap like a honeypot, obviously you will be targeting a honeypot. Unfortunately, your traces or your details are going to be collected in the honeypot, and that can be used as an evidence to file a case against you. You understand what I'm saying? Right. So, the unstructured threats are the threats initiated by a novice user. And that's the reason we call the people who perform the unstructured threat as script kiddies. What do you mean by that? Script kiddies, they don't know how to write a program. Then how come they'll be able to launch an attack? Because they got motivated or they heard about a tool. Somebody would have told about a tool. If I use this tool, I'll be able to do this. Unfortunately, when they download this tool, they might have downloaded, I'm just giving an exception, right? They might have downloaded this tool from a wrong place, or because the tool is free and they are because the tool is paid one, they might be searching for a free version. When they are searching and downloading the free version, somebody might have attached a malware as part of this genuine application. Maybe the application might be genuine, but the intention is not genuine. So what happens? That application could be embedded with a malware. Because of that, what is going to be happening? The user PC or he himself is going to be considered as the victim. You understand? And unstructured threats are going to be coming from script kiddies or novice user. In contrast, structured threats are going to be initiated by a professional, knowledgeable attacker. He knows what set of information he wants. He knows how to trace where that information has been stored. He also knows how to go and compromise the data and clear all the evidence and come back. He's a professional attacker, right? He knows all the details of what he wants, where it is available, how to get in there, how to penetrate the target network, how to compromise the machine, how to steal the data, and how to clear all of his tracks on the target network. So that's why the structured threat, people who perform the structured threat, we name them as black hat, white hat, of course, gray hats. What do you mean by black hat, white hats? See, the set of tools, the process, the procedures are all going to be the same based on the intention of an attacker. We say that black hat means what? The attacker's intention is 100% malicious. We call them as black hats. The same set of tools, procedures, process is going to be used by an attacker or a person to evaluate your network security or application security or your data security. Then we call it as for what is the purpose of doing this kind of a security analysis? He will help you in protecting your data and infrastructure. People who perform this kind of activities, we call them as white hat. See, equally they are skilled, right? So whatever the knowledge you are expecting, that is there on both the set of people, based on their intention. If their intention is malicious, then we call them as black hat. If their intention is genuine, then we call them as white hat. And what is gray hat? Partially they are malicious, partially they are genuine. What do you mean by that? Take an example. You are driving your bike on the road and you are seeing that one of your close friend has stopped his vehicle and fighting with someone. What do you normally do? Whatever happens, we believe that our friend would have not done any kind of a mistake, right? You also park your vehicle, go start supporting your friend without knowing anything. Once everything is over, you will ask, Macha, what happened? So without knowing what was the problem, without knowing whose mistake was that, we simply start supporting our friend. Probably the mistake could be our friends. So we were supporting we were on the wrong side. So we are now gray hat. Even though you are supporting your friend, but you are not supporting the right person. You understand? So partially you are genuine and partially you are malicious. Those kind of a people, we call them as what? Gray hats. Of course, a high profiled structured threat people are there. A high profiled black hats are there. There is no high profiled white hats. We are not talking about gray hats and all. High profiled structured threats are coming from a set of people. We call them as elites. Elites are also known as cyber world dons. Their 100% intention is going to be malicious. They will threaten the people. They will blackmail them, and they will also achieve what they want with them. So structured threats are coming from professionals, whereas unstructured threats are coming from script kiddies. Clear? Now the other two types of threats, internal threats and external threats. Internal threat are the threats originating from a person who has authorized access to the application, network, or data. Whatever you claim, you take it. Internal threats are originating from a person, right, who has authorized access, who has been authorized to access it. That is called as internal threat. Whereas external, the threats are being initiated from a person who doesn't have any set of authorization to the data. Again, internal threat can also be structured or unstructured. External threats can also be structured or unstructured. Is that clear? Okay. So we know what is a threat. So from where the threat is going to be initiated, just now I told you, script kiddies, black hats, white hats, gray hats, and also we have elites. And why do they do it? There are so many reasons behind this. For example, a disgruntled employee, right? So who has been fired, he knows that this is going to be happening. Or after he has been fired, he might have stolen some set of information. He might be leaking that information later. Or he must have installed a backdoor entry on the application because he was an application developer, he knows about it. And he has created a backdoor entry. Because he has been fired, he can go out and he can log into the application using the backdoor, and then he can do whatever he wants. Right? So there are so many reasons are there, like your hacktivism, crime, you have an insider threat, you have espionage, you also have terrorism. Even because of a war, the threats could be possible. So why they are going to be launching, why they are going to be doing it, why they are going to be motivated. There are so many reasons are there, right? So basically hacktivism, if you see this one, hacktivism might use computer network exploitation to advance their political or social causes. See, I'm not a politician. I'm also not that much of, I'm not having that much of knowledge on politics as well. Take about a couple of cases what is currently happening in today's scenario in Tamil Nadu, right? Whether it is the school issue or the ADMK and DMK issue or BJP issue, think about it. Whenever, right, so whenever somebody is pointing a finger against any of this politician, they will simply say that what? This is an activity, or this is a kind of a threat issued or might have been. So whenever a politician is being targeted, they will simply say that, even if you have a photo proof or video proof, whatever you give them, they will simply say that it is doctored, launched by my opponent because of my, they just wanted to destroy my political power. They just want to destroy my name, right? So that's the reason they are doing it. So something like that, hacktivism. Like this, you have variety of reasons why this threat is being launched. How they do it? We know that there are different types of threats are available, and we also know the actors why they wanted to do it. Now, how they do it? It can be a weakness in your technical front or on the personal front. What do you mean by the technical front? Assume that you have an operating system, and why do you want to update it? You have a Microsoft Windows, and you're getting the update at a frequent interval. Why do you have to update it? What's the problem? See, typically we can snooze this update. We don't want to update now. You can do that one. But what is the significance of updating, or what is the importance of doing those updates? See, the updates are going to be having the patches which can address these vulnerabilities. What is a vulnerability? Vulnerability is nothing but a weakness in your system. What is the problem in that? What is the problem in keeping that vulnerability? Those vulnerabilities can be exploited so that it can be an attack. See, how an attack can be launched when there is no weakness, you will not be able to exploit it, right? So you have a vulnerability. Vulnerability is going to be intentionally created? May not be. See, there is a statistics. For every 1,000 lines of a program, you have a vulnerability, a weakness. Every weakness could be exploited in tens and hundreds of times, hundreds of methods. Think about it. I hope you guys would have seen a movie called as Shivaji. In that, the hero wanted to construct, what is it called, a medical university or a hospital, right? So he tried all the possible legitimate method, but he was not able to get the thing done. No, he started bribing people because he wanted to do so badly. See, he wanted to achieve it. Now he wanted to get the approval. What he did, he started bribing. Okay, so one guy will come, for him cash will be given. For one other guy, gold. For another guy, land. Something like that. I'm just giving you an example. So that is the kind of a weakness we are talking about as a personal weakness. Technical weakness, I'm talking about the the weaknesses or the unwanted services which is running on the system. If you're using any kind of a digital device, if you're using mobile phone, you're getting what is that called? The mobile updates or the operating system updates are coming up. If you have an Android phone, you know, it will be having an Android OS. The releases are going to be released, and of course, the patches are also going to be released. Same way, if you have an iOS, an Apple phone, you will be having an iOS upgradation. You will also be having the patches. Patches are typically used to identify the weaknesses and fix them. Even then, there will be so much of vulnerabilities. Okay, there will be a common question. Why Windows is being targeted more often than Linux? Is that Windows is more powerful, or Windows is very weaker than Linux? Or Linux is being considered as more powerful, or Mac OS is being considered as more powerful? It is not the case. Just look into who is using Windows and who is using Linux. If you take most commonly, a no-wise user will be using a Windows machine. It's a kind of a point and click, something like who will be using a DSLR camera and who will be using a typical digital camera. The digital camera can be used by anyone. All they have to do is point a location, point an object, then click it over. The rest of the things are going to be taken care by the point and shoot camera. Even your mobile phone camera is going to be doing the same thing. Whereas the DSLR cameras, you need to have little bit of understanding in using the SLR camera. What is that aperture? What is your screen? What is that? The shutter speed? What is that shutter speed? How much exposure you want? What is the kind of would you like to use your lens? What kind of a lens you wanted to use? Would you like to use the flash or not? All these things are going to be considered. Based on that only, the quality of the image can be taken. You understand what I'm trying to say? So the technical front, whatever the devices are being used inside your organization nowadays, what set of devices are being used? Think about your home. What all the devices are there? Now, earlier days we used to have a computer that is providing connectivity to the internet. Okay, so any kind of a digital work we used to do only on the computer. Now, what happened? Mobile devices are connected to internet. Your TV is connected to internet. Apart from that, think about your smart devices. You have IoT devices. What are the smart devices? I have my iWatch. iWatch is also connected. I have my smart lamp, right? I have a smart home. I have a set of devices. They are interconnected at my home. They can talk to each other. I mean, they can be controlled using my mobile phone. So all these devices or hardware, to have these features, they also need to have an operating system, a firmware. Without an operating system or a firmware, these digital devices cannot communicate. They cannot operate. So obviously, an operating system will be there. Whenever you have an operating system, what is an operating system? Of course, we know the definition of an operating system. It is a software, right? You will be having multiple lines of programs. What is the statistic says? For every 1,000 lines of a program, there is a bug, and every bug can be exploited in tens and hundreds of methods. You understand that one? So we have technical vulnerabilities, and what is a personal vulnerability? Okay. Probably you guys would have heard about social engineering. What is that basically social engineering going to happen? Instead of talking to the devices and compromising them, talking to human will be so simple, and because you can easily compromise them, right? See, one of an example with respect to social engineering is a tailgating. So what is the tailgating? So to leave or enter into the premises, to leave the premise or to enter the premise, assume that you have to show your access card, only then the door is going to be opening. Now what happens now? Assume that you and your friends are planning to leave for a tea. You have a shift timing and everyone is allowed to have a 15 minutes of break. Okay. Now all these are being tracked down. While you are showing your card, it is going to be recorded. In and out is going to be recorded. Okay. Now the point is what? While I'm going out for a break, what I do is I'll be taking my friend. I can say them, okay, we can use your card by next time. That means what? This card, whatever the card has been shown now, is being recorded for a 15 minutes break. Next time when my friend goes, I'll also go with him. I can also enjoy that 15 minutes of break. You understand that? So this is a kind of a personal vulnerability. So you have to have a mechanism to protect these technical and personal vulnerabilities. So personal kind of a tailgate, how we are avoiding it, only one person will be allowed. You will be having that protected wheel, right? Only one person can go, show the card, and you can go out on the other side. When other person needs to use that wheel, then he has to show his card. Only then it can be rotated one more time. You understand? So that kind of protections we have to talk about. How the technical and personal vulnerabilities can be protected, or if you have the technical vulnerability, how you're going to be protecting it. Those kind of things we will see later. Now, how they do it? Just now I told you, exploit the vulnerabilities. When you have a vulnerability, you have the vulnerability, right? These vulnerabilities are going to be exploited. See, the most vulnerable asset of any organization, the most vulnerable item in any of the organization, they're a human being, they're employees. The most valuable asset of any organization, they're human beings, they're employees. You understand? So, by talking to them, by poking them, or by giving some unwanted information, or by proving that I'm coming from so and so place, you can get some information. You understand? So that's where exploiting vulnerability comes into picture with respect to personal exploitation. Personnel in the sense, the humans, right? So technical upfront, if you have a weakness, I told you that one, right? So if you don't have you have an antivirus, okay? Let's say that you have an antivirus, but you haven't updated the signature. What is the problem in that? The new set of signatures are being used to identify the new set of viruses, right? If you don't download the latest signatures, understand that those attacks or those viruses cannot be detected by your antivirus software what you have. So this is a kind of a technical vulnerability. So you have a firewall, and you have approved all the ports, you have permitted all the ports. Then what is the point in having a firewall? And you have you have a username and password. That password is being 3 characters length. So you have to make sure that the password is going to be minimum of 8 characters. There are so many reasons why we have to have a minimum of 8 characters, not 7, not 9. You understand that? There are reasons are there. But my point is, you have to allow the user to set up a password which is complex to crack it. And also, you have to have a mechanism to force the user to change the password at a regular interval, maybe for every 40 days, for 90 days. It purely depends on the corporate policy. Like, why we have to force it? If you don't force it, they will not change it. Think about your email ID, whether you have a Gmail account or a Hotmail account or a Yahoo account, doesn't matter. When did you change your password for your email account? Why do I have to change it? That would be the immediate question. I don't have any set of information. Just I told you that your email is a place where all of your emails are going to be received, like your reset password, or if you're getting an OTP via email, all of them are going to be sent to your email only, right? So make sure that you change the password at a regular interval. Now, if I don't do it, what does that happen? The attackers can get enough time to crack the password. You understand? So that's where the technical exploits and personal exploits, the technical vulnerabilities are getting exploited. The personal vulnerabilities are also being exploited. So if you say that the threat, we have seen the threat actors, we have seen why they do it, how they do it, right? So this is what we have seen it. So we have threat actors, we have seen the vulnerabilities, we have seen the exploitations, right? Now we're going to be talking about the attacks. We were talking about the threat. Threat is fear, right? So it may be coming from here, right? So now the attacks are coming up. There are hundreds and thousands of types of attacks are there. Basically, every type of attack, every attack is going to be exploiting a specific vulnerability, so that we will be considering it as a threat. If it is going to be coming from an internal employee, a professional hacker, that's where the discussions we had as of now. Now, what is that attack? Attack is the way we are going to be exploiting the vulnerability, okay? Launching an attack against a target network, a target application, or a target system. What would be the intention of it, right? So based on the purpose, see, there are so many reasons why this attack is being launched, like reconnaissance, access, or DOS. You have hundreds and thousands of attacks, but all of them have been categorized into these 3. Of course, we normally say that 4 categories, like virus, worms, and trojans as a separate category. But for this discussion, we are taking it as what? Only 3. So we have a reconnaissance category of attacks, we have access category, we also have DOS category of attack. Reconnaissance means what? Collecting the information. Collecting information, how that can be an attack. Okay. Now, when I ping something, we know ping or not. Okay, say for example, I'm just going to my command prompt. Okay, right? I'm going to the command prompt. You can see that I'm trying to ping www.genesys.com. I'm just trying to ping genesys.com. You can see that the reply is coming back. What is the meaning of it when I'm getting the reply? What is that I'm understanding? What do I understand this? As I'm getting the reply, this IP address is connected to a network and reachable for me. This is a reconnaissance. Okay, what do you mean by say? So ping is a reconnaissance. As I said earlier, these tools can be used by different set of people with a different set of intention. An attacker can use this for reconnaissance, and if, what is it called? A legitimate professional penetration tester could use the same set of tools to evaluate your network security or your information security, and they can send you a report as a recommendation how you can further enhance your information security or the network security. You understand what I'm saying that? So reconnaissance is going to be considered as information gathering. Without having the identity of the device or the application or the network, how do you be in a position to steal the data or destroy the services? It's not going to be happening, right? So reconnaissance is going to be the first level of attack. Based on the information collected, either an attacker may go for stealing that information like an access attack or destroying the data, which is called as a DOS attack. You're getting my point, right? So reconnaissance category of attacks are there, access category of attacks are there, DOS category of attacks are also there. So this is what we need to understand. Okay, ping is an attack? Obviously no, but this is going to be used by a user to check the availability, reachability of a device. Whereas the same tool or the same application is going to be used by an attacker to understand the reachability and availability of an IP address. What is that he can do? Further, he will try to go for what? Scanning, and they'll go for password cracking, and then they'll go for accessing the data. Quite possible. Okay, this is the most important reason why the firewalls will not allow the ICMP to be allowed to pass through on it. Even nowadays, if you go to the Windows machines and you're trying to ping, by default, ping is not enabled. What do you mean by that? If you're receiving a ping request, it will not respond. You understand? From that PC, you can send ping. But if somebody is trying to send a ping to this Windows machine, it will not respond. Why? Because the Windows firewall is enabled. All you have to do is you just need to disable the firewall. Only then you will be able to receive the replies as well. Hope you understand. Okay, so we have seen the categories. Just to name a couple of threats over here. See here, we have virus, worms, trojans, adware, variety of attacks are there. Now, what is the intention of it? Again, based on that, we can say that this is a kind of so-and-so attack. For example, let's take a ransomware attack. Okay, the ransomware attack is basically used to compromise your patient and taking control on it. So you have some data on it. Okay, you have some folders, you have some files. All this is being used in your day-to-day activity. By locking all of these folders and files, you will not be able to gain access to it. You will also be, when you're trying to access those protected files, you will get a message, your machine or your folder, your files have been protected. If you wanted to open this file, all you have to do is what? You have to pay those so and so money, or whatever, so much of money to this account. That's what they will call it as. That's the reason they're calling it as ransomware. Right? So what is the purpose of this? This is not a DOS and this is not an access. This is a ransomware. So they want to have some sort of benefit by proving their intelligence and compromising the machine. Okay, you understand, right? So virus, worms, and trojans, again, their intention is going to be different. A virus, worms, trojans, adware, spyware, keylogger, name anything, all of them are going to be considered as malwares. You remember, we also had a discussion. Every day, 360,000 new malwares are being developed. So how much aware you have to be? You should know what you're doing, right? So everyone in an organization should be aware of what set of things are happening, what kind of activity is going on their PC or on the device on which they are working on it. So virus, worms, and trojans, so what is the difference? Of course, they are all malwares. What a virus will do? Virus is a program, it's a malicious software attached as part of a genuine application, and it will be sent to you. The point is, unless you open up that application, so to which the malware is associated, to which the virus is associated, unless you open that application, the virus is not going to be activated at all. The virus can be used for many things. I'll tell you one of the virus which is very fascinating. In earlier days, we used to have a different processor, word processor called as what? WordStar, like how you have Windows Word, we have different word processors, right? In earlier days, we used to have something called as a WordStar, the application called as WordStar. Whatever you do it on Microsoft Word, the same set of activities we can do it with WordStar as well. Now, there is a virus which is called as a drop-down virus. If the machine is infected, if that application is infected with the drop-down virus, after the user has typed any of the characters like A, B, or C, right? So A, B, whatever the character you type, for a few seconds, the character is going to be inverted, right? And then it is going to be hanging for a while. Then the character is going to be dropped to the bottom of the screen. You understand? Okay, so drop down virus. So the characters are going to be hanging, and then over a period of time that the character will be dropped to the bottom of the screen. That's what they call it as a drop down virus. They are not achieving anything. The application is still running. They are not stealing any data, right? But even though the application is running, you will not be able to achieve what you want to achieve with it. Okay, this is one. Okay, there is also something called as a worms and trojans. The difference is what worms is. Once the device is infected with a worm, means I'm sending a worm to you, okay? I have a worm, I'm sending it to you. I cannot send it as a worm. What I have to do is I have to attach it with any of the email or any of the greeting card. I have to do that one. How do I do it? There are so many free tools are also available. As a novice user, as a script kiddie, you just need to find something called a Trojan binder, right? So you have to identify a Trojan. You have to identify a greeting card. You call both of these applications into the Trojan binder, right? First, identify which application to be visible and which application to be hidden. Then you run that application. You can see that the greeting card will be visible. The backend you will be having a Trojan attached to it, a Trojan or worm, whatever it is attached to it. I can send it. If I'm attaching a worm and I'm sending it to you, the moment it got injected into your machine, it will start doing its work. You don't need to have any sort of an interaction or activation, unlike a virus. Virus requires a human intervention to activate it. Worms and Trojans doesn't require those things. Okay. Now, so worms are basically meant for using the available bandwidth. Like what? I might be using my whole resources. Like I'll be eating up the CPU cycles. For example, even though sometimes what happens, your machine may feel very slow. Like what? You're trying to open up a Microsoft Word. After you click on the Microsoft Word, after 2 minutes, the application may open. For any activity you do, it will be taking time. And if you go and check the CPU utilization, you may see that the CPU utilization gone beyond 100% or 200%, something like that. You can see that. You understand what I'm saying? The same way, how the computer resources are being used by one set of worm, the same way, the network bandwidth can also be used by or consumed by your network worms. Now what happened? The communication between the devices are going to be very slow. You understand what I'm saying? So virus, worms. Next is what? Trojans. I'll finish this one with the Trojans itself. So when you get time, you should just go through each and every type of, I just listed few. You have hundreds and thousands of attacks. Okay. So Trojans are basically a backdoor entry, or there will be two pieces of software. One is called as a client end, another one is called as a server end. Always. So what happens? Basically what we normally do is there will be two pieces of software. We will be having one piece of software installed on the victim machine, and we will be having one control on the attacker machine. See, the Trojans are programmed to do certain specific activity. For example, keylogger, is that a Trojan? Yes, I can say it's a Trojan. What basically keylogger will do, once this Trojan has been installed on your machine, whatever the keys that you press, right? Whatever the keys that you press, those keystrokes are going to be stored in a file, and then at a set time, the file can be sent to the attacker. Now all he has to do is open up that file. You can say accessbank.com. Then you can see login, user ID and password. Every key is going to be captured, and then it will be sent to the attacker. Now attacker knows it. So Access Bank, this is a username and this is the password. He can do some sort of assumption. Then he'll be able to log in. Right. So you're getting my point, right? So that is where the Trojans comes into picture. Trojans are going to be providing some sort of backdoor entry for the attackers. Like this, you have an adware. Basically, adware is going to be popping up with many of the advertisement just to waste the user time. Spyware, spying on your machine, bots are there, backdoor entries. There are so many. You have phishing. So basically, phishing is nothing but like, for example, if you're trying to access accessbank.com or ICICIbank.com, you will be redirected by doing so many activities like your DNS poisoning, something like that. There are so many things we can do. My point is, you are trying to access a bank portal. By manipulating something, you will be redirected to a different site altogether. For example, you are accessing facebook.com, but you can be redirected to twitter.com. Quite possible. In that way, what I'm trying to do, I have my own portal which looks like accessbank.com. Okay. Now, what happens now when the users are trying to access Axis Bank? Because of my DNS poisoning, the user request is going to be redirected to my portal, which looks identical to accessbank.com. Now, what the users feel? They tried accessing accessbank.com. They didn't notice that the accessbank.com has been redirected to gopibank.com. You understand that? But it looks like exactly the same way like your accessbank.com. They will try to log in. I will wait for their username and password to enter. Once they press submit, I will say that the internet banking service is under maintenance. Please wait for next 24 hours, or please wait for further update. Once it is fixed, you will be able to access it, or in next 3 hours, you will be able to access it. Now, what is the benefit of this? I got that username and password. You understand? So we call this as a phishing. We have different types of phishing, like your spear phishing. It's a target phishing. It's a top level management phishing. You have wishing, SMS kind of a thing. You have whaling. I already explained you something called as tailgating. Impersonation. Impersonation is nothing but posing myself as someone else. Like, this is what mostly is happening on identity thieves. Like, probably there is a movie called as Identity Thief. If you guys get time, try to watch that movie. You can easily correlate that movie with your impersonations or identity thief. And there is also something called as what dumpster dive. There are so many things. Okay, I'm not going to be explaining everything. But if you wanted to know about this, feel free, be in touch with me. I'll be sharing my WhatsApp number later on at the end of this presentation, and you can talk to me as well. Okay. How this is going to be secured? Just now we understood. So there are so many factors. There are so many attacks are there. Every piece of your network, every piece of your organization's digital device needs to be protected. How do you do that one? There are so many ways we can do it. The most efficient architecture for securing any of the infrastructure is SAFE. SAFE stands for Security Architecture for Enterprises. Any point of time, at any single point of time, you cannot claim that your network is secure, your application is secure. What you have secured yesterday is not secure today, or next minute is not secured. So obviously, security is being considered as a continuous iterative process. So first of all, you have to secure, and then you have to continuously monitor. Then over a period of time, you have to evaluate your security level. Based on that evaluation, you may need to improvise your security level. Let's see one by one. What is your security? How do you secure it? First of all, you have to start hardening the operating system. You remember, earlier days we used to have a desktop. Very rarely we used to have a laptop as well. Nowadays we have every kind of a device. Your CCTV is connected to your, what is it called, your network. Your calling bill is connected. Your lamp is connected. Your TV is connected. Your tablet, phone. Instead of one phone, we have multiple phones. In every digital device, you have an operating system. So when you have an operating system, consider that as a software. Every software is going to be having what? The software is nothing but a line of programs. Now, every program, every software, we have a statistic. For every 1,000 lines of a program, you have a bug. It's just a statistics, okay? That every bug can be exploited in hundreds of methods. So first of all, we need to patching. You will be properly updating your operating system, patching your operating systems. In that way, you can fix the identified vulnerabilities. Whatever the vulnerabilities are being continuously, whatever the vulnerabilities have been identified by your the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturer, like your Windows, right? So if you have a Windows, they will be keep on sending the updates. Why they are sending it? They are continually doing the research and identifying the vulnerability, and they will also identifying the exploits for that, and then they will develop a patch for it. Okay, because of that patch, you will be able to fix that vulnerability or log that vulnerability and that exploit. For the same vulnerability, there might be a new exploit. Okay, so for that, another patch may come up. Okay, that's a different story. Hardening your operating system, that is most important by patching them. The second thing is unwanted services should be stopped. What do you mean by that? Unwanted services. See, when you are installing Windows, whether you like it or not, some add-on services will also be there. For iPhone users, Siri is there, right? For you have Alexa, right? So the point, Google, hey Google, right? So these things are basically what happen. Even if you're not using, that is being turned on. Whenever you wanted to access, say for example, I have an iPhone, I can say that, hey Siri, can you hear the voice?
I'm at 50%.
Can you please tell me the time now? Hello? Hey Siri. Can you please tell me the time now?
3:30, sir.
What is the current time now?
3:26.
So it's getting processed. Okay. Okay, so I'm just getting the time over here. I'm seeing on my mobile phone. Okay, fine. Anyway, so we have variety of things are going on. So every device is going to be having an operating system. Hardening is nothing but, I don't want the Siri to be enabled. I don't want simply, even by mistake, when I say, in Tamil we call it as what? Siri means what? Laughing, right? So if I, even by mistake I say Siri, see now my mobile is turned on now. So that's what I don't want the service. That if you don't want to use it, try to disable it. Why you have to disable it? If that service is not being used, your focus will not be on that. If you don't focus on it, it doesn't mean that the attacker will not be having any focus on it. You understand? So obviously, if the service is not required and you don't want the service to be running, disable those services. Okay, so try to implement proper firewalls. There are variety of firewalls out there in current scenario, like your network firewalls, your host-based firewalls, your application firewalls, next generation. There are variety of firewalls are available. Basically, they are going to be doing some sort of filtering on it. So depending on your requirement, you may be identifying the right firewall, and then you will be implementing to protect your infrastructure. Then we also have AAA services, authentication, authorization, and accounting. Wherever it is required, go for AAA services, right? What do you mean by that? Every access, every application access or data access, anything, device access, you need to validate who the user is, whether this guy has a proper privilege to access that application data or the PC. How do you do that one? Of course, username and password. Try to implement the two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication to further safeguard it. Accounting, you will be keep tracking of what that user has done. Okay. Then you have URL filtering, like what category of portals, like you think about your university. What is that basically happening? Can you access social networking sites? Can you access any of the restricted sites? Can you do that one? How this is being done? That's where the URL filtering comes into picture. Now, wherever you require VPN, of course, a VPN can be used as a solution to provide a connectivity between the sites which are in different location, or from your work from home scenario. You'll take the VPN, but at the same time, the same VPN can be used to bypass your URL filtering as well. You can do that one. Of course, yes. How come? Because this is my PC, right? The organization given PC. No, it's not the case. Nowadays, you have an option to use your own device. Bring your own device. You also have choose your own device. You have an option as a new employee joining into any of the companies. They might be asking you, depending on the company. If you go and join Cisco, right? For example, if you join Cisco, and based on your ranking, they will ask you whether you want Mac or you want Windows. That's it. You want Mac, you can use it. If you want Windows, you can use it. There are a variety of things that are happening. So SSL offloading is one of the solution using which any encrypted traffic which is going out of your infrastructure can be offloaded and see what is that going on. Right? Why you have to offload it? Because the encrypted data, you don't have a way to see what is that being communicated. So what you basically do is, if two people are communicating, you have to sit in between them, and then you will be able to screen all of the communication. Like what? When somebody is asking, who is Google? I will say I'm Google. So from your perspective, I'm Google. You will be sending the request to me in an encrypted manner. We would have negotiated the keys as well. Now what happens? The data comes to me, I will decrypt it, I will see what is that happening, I will forward this request to the original Google, then I will receive the response, re-encrypt it, and send it back to you. So what is that I'm achieving it? Basically, I'm seeing whatever is being communicated. This kind of a concept can also be implemented to screen the encrypted data which is leaving or entering your infrastructure, which we normally call it as SSL offloading. So try to have antivirus, anti-spam filters, and of course, you have to make sure that the data loss prevention is also being addressed. What do you mean by that? No files can be sent to your personal email ID. No files can be shared to the public folders, public storage devices. So in that way, you can safeguard none of the data of your organization is leaked to the public network. Okay, so monitor is the second phase. The first phase is what? Secure phase. The second phase is what? Monitor phase. So monitor is what? See, now you're trying to enter into your organization. You're trying to show your access card. Okay, well and good. Everyone is allowed to open the main door so that they can enter into the office. They can also leave the office. But my point is, an HR personnel is trying to enter a server room. Is that okay? Of course, you can claim that he is not going to be allowed because he is not supposed to be entering the data center according to the privileges of your organization. His role doesn't have any authorization to open the server room. If that is the case, now tell me the point. Anyway, they'll not be able to access the door, right? They'll not be able to open the door. Why do I have to monitor? If I monitor, I will get the information that an unauthorized person from the HR team was trying to enter into the data center. I can immediately write the question or write an email to him stating that, why did you try accessing or why did you try entering into the server room? I got a notification. If you don't have this monitoring, you will not be able to ask them. By sending this kind of a mail, you can confirm them your infrastructure is being continuously monitored, and every people who are part of this monitoring team is alert, right? So you have NOC, Network Operations Center, you have SOC, Security Operations Center. You can also take the help of intrusion detection system, right? Intrusion prevention system, then SNMP based monitoring, syslog based monitoring. You can do any kind of a monitoring. So the team which is basically monitors are called as NOC and SOC, security monitoring and network operations monitoring. Now, so evaluation, how do I evaluate it? This is my third phase within my safe architecture. So how do I do it? Can I ask an attacker, hey attacker, I think I have secured my network. Can you please try attacking my infrastructure and tell me whether you can succeed or not? Is that the way we can do it? No. Instead of asking an attacker to do it, I myself use my experience and expertise to pose myself as an attacker, and I will be launching launching attacks against my network or the application or the data. And then I try to understand which are all the areas I need to address. Like what? This is the loophole I identified, and this is the vulnerability I have identified. So I just need to understand the vulnerabilities of my infrastructure by performing penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, and security audit. What is the purpose of it? I'll be able to help my organization with the set of identified loopholes with which they'll be able to improve my security. Like what? Enhance the configuration, replace the firewall, replace the technology, implement the new set of technologies. Like instead of going for the first generation firewall, I can go for a next generation firewall. And most importantly, the security awareness training to all of the employees in your organization. I think I started somewhere like why this is more important, and this cybersecurity awareness program I prepared for the people who are techies. Okay, that's why this is coming like this. There are people, means every organization will have will be having set of employees who are not part of IT team. Do we have to give any kind of a security awareness training? Obviously, yes. See, take a case. How many of us, including me, while we are browsing, a pop-up is coming up. I see that set of informations are there. Yes, no, cancel is there. What we typically do you think that we will be reading the whole set of content and then say, based on our understanding, say yes, no, or cancel? No, simply we have an understanding that if you press yes, you will be able to proceed further. Probably you might have agreed for installing a script or a software on your machine without knowing it. It is like what? If you install any of the new software, you get a license agreement. It will be having a set of information in pages. We simply scroll all the way to the end, select accept, and then go for it. Something like, if you are applying for a credit card, obviously you will not be doing it now. Probably after you go to the office or join any of the company, probably you might be taking any of the loans. By the time, there will be a lot of terms and conditions which will be in very tiny character, tiny font. You may not be in a position to read and understand, even if it's very clear. Probably it might be difficult to understand the terminologies of the finance institutions. Anyway, you have to sign it, right? When you are signing it, you are agreeing for all the terms and conditions. Is that true or not? The same thing is going to be happening when you are accessing the internet. A pop-up is coming up, yes, no, cancel button. There are a set of informations are there. Without reading and understanding the consequences of approving this activity, you may be allowing them to do it. Later, even if you file a case against them, they will simply say that we have taken your consent and this is the proof. So, security awareness training is for everyone, for employees, yes. Is that for parents? Yes. Is that for kids? Yes. Is that for HR professionals? Yes. Is that for auditors? Yes. It is for everyone who's going to be part of an organization, who's going to be part of your family as well. Right? So, with that, you will be able to understand what is that being coming up, and you will be able to act accordingly based on the knowledge what has been given in your security awareness training. You got the point, right? So, this is what your cybersecurity awareness. Within 1 hour of stipulated time, I tried to condense most of the information which could be useful for you guys. For further clarifications, if you wanted to have any sort of discussions in person or you wanted to talk to me, you can. So you can take the approval from your university and then you can talk to me. You can write an email or you can also be in touch with me. I'll share my contact. So in what way this is going to be useful? There are many vendors, they are providing the certifications. What is the purpose of certification? One thing, you prove that you have the knowledge. By having the certification from CompTIA, EC Council, Cisco, AWS, Azure, you have variety of vendors who will be offering this kind of certifications. So by passing those examinations, what is that we are proving? We have that enough knowledge. At the same time, your visibility to the organization. What I mean to say that, there are a couple of people, a team of people, check your college mates itself, your classmates itself. All of them are trying to apply for a job opening, and a couple of them are having certifications, a couple of them are not. Whom do you think that the company will select? Means for the further discussions. Of course, finally they may be selecting or not selecting, that's a different story. The certificates allows you to get the opportunities, right? And also once the certification is based on the certification, you got an opportunity to work with an organization, you have to continuously enhance your skills, and you also need to prove your organization that your education is continuing, you are developing, you are coming up with a new set of skills, you are upscaling yourself, and this is going to be helping you in your career promotions and all. Okay, you're getting my point. So that's where the certifications are going to be helpful for you. Again, my contact details are given. You can write an email to gopi@genesys.com. Then you can also be in touch with me on my mobile 9566224444. I'm available on WhatsApp as well. Yes, that's the end of my cybersecurity awareness workshop. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in another discussion, workshop, or training.
Thank you, sir. So now the session is open for questions.
Thank you very much.
Post your question.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions over there. During the session, there was a question with respect to honeypot. See, honeypot basically it is a trap. Right? See, we have seen different kind of categories. The threats are going to be initiated from different types of people. We have seen structured, unstructured, internal and external threats, right? So basically, a professional attacker could be in a position to identify and differentiate whether this is a trap or not. But anyway, out of 100, how many of them would be professionals? Probably 50%, 60%, 70%. With that 30%, the remaining persons, they are not professionals. But even if you want to protect your infrastructure, protect your resources, what I'm doing is, while they're doing the scanning, I'll be able to show that. So while I'm sorry, I got a message. Okay, fine. See, what I'm trying to do is I'm just placing a server with all the vulnerabilities being shown to show exposed to the public network. While an attacker is coming and scanning for this vulnerability, my honeypot is going to be the visible device for them so that they'll be able to launch an attack. As they're launching an attack, I'll be able to collect enough information about the attack and I can make that as a proof. I can also file against a case file a case against that particular attacker. It's quite possible. If I have a single device, I call it as a honeypot. If I have a group of devices, I call it as a honeynet. Right? So how these honeypots are going to be built? I think that was another question. Honeypot, you can build a server on your own, and you may need to invest a lot of money in building the server and all. Instead, there is a possibility that if you have an IPS device, the IPSs are capable of impersonating. That means you don't need to have a dedicated server to host all of the vulnerabilities. Instead, you can have the server impersonated on the IPS. So whatever you can achieve with a physical server or virtual server, you can do that one by impersonating on an IPS. That is possible. I'm not very sure who was asking that question. Srinivas Rao. Srinivas Rao, did I answer your question? Is that clear for you?
Sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. And there was another question, which type of firewall is better? See, all the firewalls are going to be the same, okay? Say, you say that packet filter, stateful inspection firewall, proxy firewall, next generation firewall, all of them are going to be doing some sort of filtering. In many cases, what we normally do is, if you take the next generation firewall, they are stateful inspection firewall, as well as they do additional features embedded on it, like threat prevention, antivirus, anti-spam, and you have variety of filtering services available on the next generation firewall. You take any next generation firewall, either Palo Alto or Fortinet or your Cisco FTD, there are variety of firewalls out there. All of them are going to be providing similar set of services, but their architecture could be different. Their packet processing sequence could be different. So depending on the infrastructure where you are expecting the firewall to be positioned, and which firewall could be very relevant and sufficient for protecting the data. So you have to identify the firewall based on the requirement. Of course, budget is also playing a very vital role. Oh, that clears the other question. Who was asking that question? Not sure. Yeah, Sanju. Which certification is best for beginners who want to become cyber forensics expert? Okay, see, the thing is, I have explained you the safe part, right? The security architecture for enterprises. There are four different phases are there: secure, monitor, evaluate, and what is it called? Your improvisation. So these are all the four stages. So most of the time, what people are trying to do is they're trying to directly getting into the what is it called? This evaluation phase. Now, because of that, what happens? See, if you don't know how a network operates, what is an operating system, how they are going to be connected, how a firewall works, it will be very difficult for you to penetrate into a network. Without knowing an operating system, how do you compromise it? Without knowing an application, how do you attack it? Without knowing a firewall, how do you fool it? It is not at all going to be possible. Right? It will take more of time. Instead of completing the work in 10 minutes, you may need to take at least 1 or 10 hours to complete that work. So normally what I would like to say is, even before you get into the forensics or your what is it called, penetration tester, I would recommend you to be strong on any one operating system. Whether you're certified or not, doesn't matter for me. Especially you have to be very familiar with Linux. Then you can get into the operating systems. First of all, you have to be familiar with operating system. Then you can go for any of the security devices. Then if you get into any of your domain-specific certifications, it would make sense, like your CEH or CHFI. There are other forensic programs also, but I normally recommend to go for SANS certification. SANS certifications are difficult to complete, but it has its own value across the globe, instead of doing some normal certifications. Of course, Madras University is offering you PG Diploma in Cyber Forensics and MSc Cyber Forensics. I guess Lata ma'am is also here. Okay, any other questions?
Hello, sir. I'm
Yes.
audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. My name is Anand. I am currently working in TCS. I worked as an intern in Ernst & Young SOC, Security Operations Center,
Okay.
for 6 months. There,
Okay.
they insisted me to do some basic certifications in security or in networking, Like
Uh-huh.
if you take networking CCNP or CCNA, they suggested me to do. As far as security is concerned, they suggested me to do CH or the CompTIA Security Plus, CompTIA Security Plus and CompTIA Networks. So they
Okay.
suggested me to do that. So completing CH is good or CompTIA is good. I need to know that because both
Okay.
of them are one is not practically oriented, and CH is somewhat practically we can do some tools based stuff and all. So which is better for a company perspective to take me as a security professional?
Okay. So the purpose of doing the certification, you want to upscale yourself. Am I right?
Yeah.
You wanted to gain more amount of knowledge on it. So in that case, again, I would recommend you to go through the SANS certifications. SANS certifications content are really strong, and you have to work hard to gain the certification as well. I'm not saying that CEH or Security Plus are not valuable. They are also valuable, but compared to SANS content is amazingly good. Means that if you are certified, then obviously everyone can start believing that you have that amount of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I would recommend you to go for SANS, but out of these two, is you want an answer, I'll ask you to go for CH.
Okay. Okay.
Security Plus, though the content is good, there is no much of lab exercises on it, and the CompTIA certifications, according to my understanding, is not having that much of value in India. If you go out of India, yes, you have much of value on it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Right? But
Yeah.
before you get into the CEH or something else, please make sure that you are comfortable with any one of the operating system and do the CCNA certification.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Hello, sir. Can you share your contact information once again? I could take some screenshot.
I think I have shared the presentation also. Can I share the contact here? Not sure. I think you can talk to Jayapriya, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. So she will share
Yeah.
the contact to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, I think that there is no other questions.
I
Shall I
guess so.
close, sir?
Yep. If there are no questions and you're okay to close the session, I'm okay with that.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's really a great session, sir. So in a short period, we have gained more knowledge about attacks as well as its type and the various ways to secure our data. Thank you very much, sir. And also we have a thirst in learning. I assure that we will definitely watch the movie which you have mentioned. Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
that's great. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. All the very best.
And an instruction to the participants. Participants kindly fill in the feedback form which is mandatory for your attendance. Thank you all. Priya
Thank you,
ma'am?
ma'am.
Priya
Yes,
ma'am, is
ma'am.
there anything to convey?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We can
Shall
wind
we
up.
wind up the session?
Yes, sure.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.